I've been talking a lot about shooting no budget films. And this is something you should do when you're first starting out. If you're a beginning filmmaker or you're just playing around with the idea that I'd like to make a film, I'd like to make a feature film, I'd like to make a short film, I'd like to make a really short film, like a scene with a beginning, middle, and end. And I've been talking a lot about how to do that with no budget. So what I have today for you is how to create a no budget production plan. And I'm going to go through the different topics that I use when I do projects. Even though I've done projects with budgets, kind of big budgets for me, I still continue to do small budget projects. And now, since I'm back here on YouTube, I'm doing even more micro budget and no budget productions. You can take a look at some of them on my channel. I've started posting a lot of the stuff I've been editing, the content I've been editing, most of it comedy related, because I know comedy plays well here on YouTube. And I watch a lot of dramas also and darker stuff, but comedy really lifts you up. And I see why that does so well here on YouTube. Most people don't want to come to YouTube to watch heavy, dark drama and be brought down. They want to see nice little clips with funny stories, interesting characters, and that's part of my channel here. So let's get right back to it. How to create a no budget production plan. First, we want to talk about the script and the concept. Now, I know I've talked about making scripts for no budget projects in previous videos, but I want to get a little bit more detailed in this whole plan as every element fits into the plan. You want to write a tight, short script with limited characters and locations. You want to focus on what's realistic to film with minimal resources. Now let's talk about that a little bit. Short, tight script. When they're saying that, we're not thinking about you shooting, big vistas, big cityscapes. We want to talk about small stories. And a lot of times, beginning filmmakers, they want to do something like films or projects or television shows that they may see online or on Netflix or Hulu. They want to do something like that with big expensive locations, big expensive extras, gunfights, battles, all kinds of stuff that's really out of your no budget realm. We want to talk about small personal stories. Now, if you think about it in your life, think about some of the interesting things that happened to you in your life that took place in one day, that may have took place in one afternoon, maybe took place in one classroom when you were in high school. Small personal stories can be very interesting. And it's great to do those when you're first starting, because you're going to go through the whole process and you're going to be able to learn what it takes to make a longer short, and maybe even another longer short, and then maybe even a feature film. So you want to start small. That's why if you think about it, in film school, they usually start out with shooting simple scenes so that you can go through the whole process and you can learn what's needed. You can get hands-on. Actually, that's the best way to learn in filmmaking, I think. It's great to learn the theory, and I had a previous video that I talked about how important learning the theory of acting, directing, and editing, which is what I normally talk about. And you need to know the basics. You need to know what's right and what's wrong, what's standard. You need to know all of those things, and you can learn those over time. But the best way to really learn to do it and to develop your own abilities and skills and the way you like to work is to actually get out there and do it. That's what I tell a lot of young filmmakers when I talk to them. I used to work for a program that would tell students, go into high schools and talk to students about college. And so I used to always tell them the best way to learn what you want to do is to work with people who are already doing it. So you want to start making small films. You could start by volunteering on someone else's project. I know a lot of people these days don't like to really volunteer that much, but in the film business, that's a great way to go in and be involved with everything. And especially too, if you're volunteering as a production assistant, you can go and you can, be behind the scenes and see what's really going on. And I like to tell volunteers that work on productions, like production assistants or whatever project you're volunteering on, be upfront with whoever's making the film. Be upfront with the director and the producer, because you normally don't get that ability on a big project where you're being paid to be there. But if you're volunteering, you can tell them, I'm here, I want to help, I'm going to be really helpful, but I'd like to learn. I don't just want to go get coffee. I don't just want to go pick up the lunch. And if they say no, then that's not the project for you. Because if you're volunteering your time and you're there to learn and you want to learn, but you also want to help, you should be able to get something out of it. And the least you could get out of it is to learn. You could work with the camera person, you could work with the sound person, you can work with the lighting person, special effects, makeup. Try to pick the job that you want to learn and make sure that the people working on the project are willing to point some things out to you. They don't have to give you a class, but they can give you a little bit of tips of how they do stuff and be able to talk and open to talk. So that's just a little tip about getting that experience that you need. But let's get back to, you want to include in your script limited characters. Now, again, if you're just starting out and you're making your very first short, let's focus on short. You're making your very first short, I'd say start with 2 or 3 characters. Write a script that includes 2 or 3 characters. Maybe that script takes place in your living room or in your backyard, something like that. And you want to go through the whole process of writing the script, casting. You want to have limited locations. You want to keep limited locations. Like I said, it may take place in the living room. It may take place in the kitchen. It may take place in the living room and the kitchen. But you want to get used to limiting yourself when you're first starting so that you can get the project done. You can go through the whole process, go through the editing, go through everything, wardrobe, casting, just like if you were doing a feature. And you're going to learn so much, you're not going to believe it. And even if it doesn't come out the way you wanted it to come out, even if it doesn't come out as a great project that you're proud to show to someone, make sure you go through it and you evaluate it yourself. Look at what you could have done better. And I've done this a lot in the past too. When I first started out, I did that a lot. I did it on a bigger scale. I'm looking at a feature that I spent a lot of money on, and I'm going through it and I'm saying, oh, I could have did this better, or I could have did that better. Learn from my mistake. Start with shorts, and no pressure, no worry, can I make my money back? No worry, is anyone going to like it? No worry, is it going to get distribution? That's the beautiful thing too here about YouTube. If it comes out to where you do like it a little bit and you'd like to put it online, you can tell people, this is my very first short, I put it online, I'd like to get feedback. So that's another thing that's great about today, what we have as content creators, filmmakers. You can get your work seen and evaluated by your peers, people here on YouTube, people also along the same lines. And be upfront. I'm an independent filmmaker. I'm just starting out. I made my first project. I'd like some feedback, positive and negative. And that's one thing you also need to get used to. You're going to get negative feedback. You're going to get positive feedback, but you want to get that negative feedback because sometimes the negative feedback is something that can be very useful to you. A lot of times your family and friends won't say the harsh negative feedback, but you should be able to get that online, and look at it. And don't just dismiss it out of hand. Look at it and see if it has any merit, So that's going to help you get used to criticism. And also sometimes there can be little nuggets of good information that you need to look at and you need to consider for your next project. So keep that in mind. Okay, let's talk a little bit here about, let's talk a little bit about, my computer went to sleep. I want to make sure I stay focused. That's why I have my little notes up here for you guys. Let's see, where am I? Oh, okay, here we are. Pardon me. Equipment and crew. Now, let's start out if you're brand new and you've got one of those fancy, expensive iPhones. You're set. You got your phone, which you really wanted and you needed. You can take that phone and make a really high quality looking short. Do a little bit of research online, find out about putting it into manual mode or ways that you can control the exposure and stuff like that, because you don't want the exposure jumping all around wildly. So I'm sure, I don't have an iPhone, I'm an Android kind of guy, but I'm also into Mac for editing, but I've never really gotten to iPhone. But that's beside the point. Your new iPhones, you can shoot a high quality short film. Some people have even shot longer feature films. You've seen those expensive commercials online that were shot on an iPhone. But you can shoot a really good quality short on your iPhone or your Android phone. I'm not going to let my Android buddies out of this. You can shoot it on your phone. That is such, when I started out, that was something that was not even imaginable to me, shooting something of high quality on a phone. So feel free, gather a few people together. Get some volunteer actors, get some volunteer production people, friends, and tell them, we're going to have a pizza party after it's over with. And don't, you don't have to even shoot all day. You could do a short, 4, 3, whatever amount of time, 2 hours. You do a little teeny simple short, but you go through the whole process. You create the shot list, create the script, break it down, shoot so that you have all the coverage you need. Take it seriously, even if it's a volunteer project. Have a pre-production meeting with your volunteer cast and crew. Do some rehearsals. Don't just get out there and wing it and try to make it up as you go along, because you want to learn something from this. You want it to be valuable. Like I said, and you don't have to have that pressure that this has to be sold, that this has to make money. This can be a learning experience for everyone that's helping you. I know a lot of people who have started here on YouTube have started with just their friends as their crew, their friends as their cast, and you can do the same thing. You don't have to have professional actors because you're not really concerned about that. You could come up with some kind of scenario where maybe if it's 2 or 3 actors and they're sitting around and they're maybe, for instance, okay, here's something off the top of my head. They're at a book club and they're all sitting around and they're reading chapters out of the book. But hidden inside that book in the page can be their script. So you don't even need professional actors just to go through the whole project so that you can learn what you need to learn about making a film from the very beginning to the very end. So don't let any of these things stand in your way. You could get, like I said, when I started out years ago with the first VHS cameras, we used to get my family, when we got together on holidays, instead of just sitting around and, having our meal and then sitting there talking and everybody's looking at their watch when they're going to go, I would gather them around and we would make little short improvised films. I didn't tell them. I was in college and I would come home with all the equipment. Sometimes I would bring the equipment. I'd borrow the equipment. I'd sign it out for the weekend from college and drive back to New Jersey. I was in college in Maryland. I'd drive back to New Jersey down in Woodbine, and my family would all gather. That's where we gathered on a lot of the holidays. And we would make short little funny skits. And I was learning. I was learning what worked and what didn't work. I had a volunteer. They didn't know it. I had a volunteer cast and crew, and we all had a great time. We still even have, to this day, we still have some of that footage online of my Coleman family movies. I mean, I could if anybody's interested in seeing it, shoot me an email. My email is down in the description, and I'll send you a link to it. But I learned a lot on that. I learned a lot making those family movies, and those videos are a cherished thing that my family members have, that we all still share to this day, and that was over 40 years ago. So you can do the same thing now with your smartphone. You can shoot scenes. You can edit them together. You can go through the whole process, and you're going to be learning. You're going to be learning what works. How do I get angles? How do I work with actors who may not be trained that much? How do I do the lighting? How do I record the sound for the best optimal sound on the project? So there's a lot of things that you can learn by just shooting with 2 characters who are volunteers, and you may have a couple of people who are volunteering them as your crew members. And you don't even need that. All you need is your camera and even some volunteers to help you out. I've even seen online recently here on YouTube, I haven't watched any of the videos, but people who are talking about making single films with just themselves, setting up the camera and shooting. That's great. That's done. I've done that a number of times when I was in college, 40 years ago. I used to shoot down in the TV studio. I'd go down there, I'd get the equipment, and I'd go in some of the rooms and I'd shoot myself as another character talking to myself. So you learn by doing. Hands-on is the best way you're going to learn this stuff. You got to get out there and do it. Let's see. Locations. Find free locations. People's homes, public spaces, parks. I've talked about getting free locations before. I'm just going to go over this really short. But yeah, most likely if you want to do this and you want to learn from it, you want to shoot in your home or your apartment or your mom or dad's home or apartment. You want to shoot somewhere where you don't have the pressure of public gathering around and looking or being chased away because you don't have a shooting permit. You want to shoot somewhere where it's comfortable and it's conducive to learning. You can take your time. You can do it right. You can do it professionally so it looks the best you can get, because that's the best way you're going to learn how to do this. is trying to shoot it as if you're shooting an A film. I made a lot of what I call B movies over the years, and the one reason my B movies got picked up by major distributors and got out there on the shelves was because we never treated them like a B movie. We never didn't concentrate on having good acting performances, having the best written scripts that we could have. You know, we would polish it, we would rehearse, we would do the breakdowns, we would do rehearsals, we would get special effects, we never treated it like a bad B movie. And that's one thing that gets to me as an independent filmmaker. When I see projects that have a lot of money and they're just completely bad done, the actors don't even know what their lines are. And a lot of times it's not the actor's fault. It's because the director or producer didn't have a script available so they could have time to rehearse. You know, if you want their performance to be something that you can be proud of and they can be proud of, you need to get them the script ahead of time so they can at least work on the lines and at least come prepared knowing what their dialogue is. Because once they know the dialogue, they can deliver it more believably, or you can direct them. You can't, as a director, I put my director hat on, as a director, you can't direct an actor who doesn't know the character or doesn't know the lines. I know people have tried, but it's not going to work because the only thing the actor is thinking about is what's my next line? What's my next line? And that's why you see these wooden, stilted performances. You even see it in a lot of independent films that are, you know, have money that they should be embarrassed for going forward without letting people get prepared. I don't know what it is. I think it's that they don't value the performance of the actor. Sometimes young filmmakers get caught up in the whole process of I have the equipment and I have the location and I'll just throw a script together. That's the least of their worries. Whether the script makes sense, whether the dialogue is believable, or whether the story makes sense. And then they wait till the day before the shoot and try to cast somebody. You know, I worked with a producer years ago. Him and I had done a series of shorts. And actually they went to an online festival and they actually won some awards. So me and him decided, let's work together again. And he put together a project. He wrote a script, very low budget stuff that could be shot in one location. All things I'm going through with you right here. And I was willing to work with him again because I enjoyed working with him and the project came out well and we won some awards for it. But what happened was, long story short, his two lead characters dropped out the night before the shoot. And he wanted to grab some people and give them the script and have them come in and shoot the day without having a chance to even look at the script. I said, no, I'm not going to do that. And he was really mad. I guess he hated me after that. We never worked together again. But I told him, I'm not going to make something that looks that bad. I told him I was past that stage in my life, in my career. I was working with him because I liked his work, I liked his ideas, but I wasn't going to purposely make something that I knew was going to be no good. Now, I've done that in the past when I first started out. I made a lot of stuff that I don't even have my name attached to it because I was learning. I was learning. And this was content I made that later on went to be sold and was distributed. And, it wasn't my best work. And I didn't want my name on it. And I learned to stand up and say no when someone wants to make something that's not good, And I'm talking now about getting a little bit more advanced. But when you're beginning and you have a distribution outlet like YouTube, you can make stuff that's, marginal and just tell people, I'm learning. This is my first feature. I see that a lot online and on YouTube and on Facebook. I'd like to get some feedback. And if you're not comfortable shooting a whole short, just go ahead and shoot a scene, and get that feedback from the public and see what they say. Get used to reading what people say about your work and the comments. Sometimes it can be harsh. Sometimes it can be unreasonable. Sometimes it can be, trolling behavior where they're just trying to put you down. Don't worry about that. The biggest of the big, Spielberg, whoever, they get bad comments about their projects. So don't let that stop you from creating. Continue to do what you want to do. Let's see. Let's go on to the next one. Casting. We'll talk a little bit about that. I think I'll wrap it up with casting. So again, I'm going to repeat what I said earlier. You can also get local student actors. You can get people from community theater. If your town has a community theater, go there and talk to the director. You know, send them an email. Tell them you want to do a casting. You want to do a shoot in their theater with some of their actors. I bet you a lot of them will take you up on that offer. If you want to shoot just a scene, you know, tell them you're a new filmmaker and you want to shoot some scenes and you want to put them on YouTube. You'd like to get some of their actors to work with them. You want to learn the whole process of casting. You want to learn the whole process of directing, writing, you know, that kind of stuff. So you may be able to work with students. You may be able to work with high school students, you know, community college students. There might be a major college or university in your town. Reach out to some of the teachers and stuff and find out if there's anyone willing to collaborate with you on that. And I bet you'll find someone, especially in community theater. When I was in college, brief story, when I was in college, I was an intern at one of the NBC stations, and they were putting on a play for the community theater. So I did the play in community theater and they filmed it and we did it on the local television station. Now that was years ago, but that same concept can still work. You know, you can supply the equipment because you have the equipment, your iPhone, like I said in the beginning, that iPhone or that smartphone with your video camera on there shooting 4K. You know, you can't beat that. And a lot of the actors will volunteer because they want copies of it, and make sure you give them their content. This is me as an actor talking. Whenever I bring it up, I get mad because there's a lot of projects still floating around from over my past 35 years as an actor who I've done for people for free. Some of it good scenes, good stuff that would have helped me out over the years as far as my resume and examples of my acting work that I could never get from these independent producers or students. So don't you be like them. If an actor works for you, make sure you give them a copy of their stuff, even if it's just the raw footage. It doesn't have to be finalized as far as editing goes. You know, they just want the footage. They came and shot for you for free. Give them the footage. So again, there are many reasons for you as an independent filmmaker, just starting out, Filmmaker 101, to get your camera and shoot. You don't need any fancy gear. You don't need a full crew. You could have the minimum of 1 or 2 actors who help you out. It's always better to have 2 because then you can have reverse shots. Minimum of 2 actors. Get out there and shoot. Shoot at someplace in your house, in one of their apartments. You know, get that experience that will help you become the filmmaker you want to be. I'll see you in the next one.